Hi, my name is Robert Harriman, and welcome to today's show. Now, on February 5th, there was a blog post on the website of Representative Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. It was called the Green New Deal FAQs. Of course, it's since been taken down. However, thanks to the Wayback Machine, you can still get a copy if you want to check it out. Now, according to the blog post, the purpose of the Green New Deal is as stated. The goal of the resolution is to define the scope, scale, and purpose of the Green New Deal. It is intended to define what is necessary for any legislation that aims to be Green New Deal legislation. The resolution puts forward 5 goals to be accomplished through a 10-year plan that involves 14 transformative industrial and infrastructure projects and 15 supporting principles for social and economic justice and security necessary to accomplish the Green New Deal. Now, in today's show, we're going to look at what does this all mean, right? The history and the economics and the massive government intrusion that this would bring upon the United States. Today, I am joined by Professor of Economics at Frostburg State University, Dr. William Anderson. Dr. William Anderson, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, good to be here.
Well, let's go ahead and start out by looking at some history. History is always important to put things in perspective. Now, we've seen large government intrusion into nations' different economies in the past in a number of countries. Can you talk about this and how did it turn out?
Well, usually what happens is that, especially in, say, in a country like ours, it starts out with small stuff. The idea is that you need to try to fix this little problem or that, and of course it escalates. Part of the problem is because when you engage in intervention, you end up creating other problems. It's not like you're solving everything. It's like economists would say, you have a, quote, Pareto optimal move. That is that you move and your movement helps somebody, but it doesn't hurt anybody else. What invariably happens is that your move is going to hurt somebody else at the same time. It's going to create a problem, and in that particular problem, now you've got a choice. Do you end the intervention, or do you intervene in order to deal with the intervention? And so you end up with this sort of cascading series of choices. And it really depends. In the Soviet Union, the government tried to run the entire economy, which did not work very well, to put it mildly. It was the same way in China, and places like Vietnam and elsewhere. And now what you have, you're left with Cuba and North Korea. They're the last of the Mohicans, I guess you would say.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you've read the Green New Deal, the proposal, the bill. Is there anything in U.S. history that compares to this proposal?
No, I would say definitely not. And that includes the New Deal. The New Deal was never an attempt for the government to run the economy. The closest that we came was the government's attempt with the National Industrial Recovery Act, and also with a sister law, the Agricultural Adjustment Act. Both of those, you had the government cartelizing the economy, but the cartels were private affairs. It's that they made their own rules, set wages and hours and things like that. Now, you had the government oversight, but the thing about it was that it was already falling apart. Interestingly, I had a publication on this about 20 years ago, dealing with the National Industrial Recovery Act. And it fell apart under its own weight, and by the time it was struck down by the Supreme Court, you already had companies trying to get out of it. But the government itself was in the background, but it was not actually taking ownership and all and the like. I guess the closest thing we would have had to a command economy was the economy during World War II. And people will say, well, that was great. Look at that. Look how well the economy did. Well, yeah, you had high GDP, but most of it was for war goods. These were goods that people would not want to use. I mean, I'm not sure about you, but I really don't like the idea of somebody dropping a bomb on my house. That is not wealth enhancing. And, so you made goods that were not wealth enhancing. They were made to kill other people and destroy things. That was the purpose. And you had the government then directing, but not taking over ownership, but they certainly directed the economy, not unlike what you saw in Germany. I mean, the scheme was actually very similar to what Hitler was doing in the 1930s. Now, please be careful. Don't interpret this as my saying that the government of the United States turned into a fascist dictatorship. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the patterns of control and ownership were similar to what we saw in Germany and a little bit lesser so in Italy.
Yeah. Now, you said in a recent piece that you wrote that Representative Ocasio Cortez, with the Green New Deal, she has called for nothing short of the destruction of life as we know it. Not hyperbole, huh? Not hyperbole.
No, it's not. And in fact, the co-founder of Greenpeace pretty much said the same thing. And he had a reply to her when she was talking about thinking big or whatever, and he said this is insane. That he said that you can't sustain life in this country with this kind of a scheme. And I mean, and it's sad that people cannot understand the implications. What happens when you say, okay, we're going to take every automobile, every truck, almost every train. We're only going to have electricity through windmills and solar power, and no airplanes, no jets in the air. And this is how we're going to live. Well, hello, you aren't being able. You're not going to be able to plant crops. You're not going to have electric powered tractors. You're not going to have. You can't build. The capacity doesn't exist. I mean, that. You can't just go ahead and just start expanding Tesla into some kind of behemoth. The capacity does not exist. We would not be able to create it. Would not be economically possible. I'm not saying feasible. I'm saying possible. Because you have to understand something, that someone like, we call her AOC, she looks, okay, this is how they approach it. It's just, well, we'll just have to go and purchase the materials that will allow us to make this. Okay, well, how will we get the money? Well, we'll print it. Yeah, that's a tickie. We'll print money, and we'll be able to buy, and we'll be able to create this huge factory and where we make electric cars and trucks and electric tractors. And, oh, yeah, we're going to crisscross the whole United States with high-speed rail that we don't have now. And it is so ludicrous as to defy the imagination. You have to think of the possibilities. What can you create something? Do you have the physical resources to do it? Could the existing labor force put together something like this? All of it is, answer no. And people say, well, you just need to think big. No, I mean, this isn't, no, I don't need to think big. I mean, it doesn't matter if you think big or think small. If you might remember back in my college days, E.F. Shoemaker wrote this book called Small is Beautiful. and he was talking about appropriate technologies and on and on. And basically, his idea of the ideal society was what they did in China during the Great Leap Forward. Well, of course, he left something out. But this is, you're dealing with the mentality that it's what they say is, hey, we're dreaming big, we're thinking, we want to do this or that, and we want to save humanity. And in their mind, we've got a 10-year window. If we don't get this done in 10 years, all humanity will be lost. Let me give an analogy, okay? The idea is this, that they say, okay, we've got all these, how can we sustain life? We're not going to be able to sustain life if we have too much global warming. So we're going to totally pivot the economy, and but you're not going to be able to sustain life. You're going to have to get rid of a huge portion of the world's people. It's kind of like, remember Hans Sennholz, the economist, was talking about federal government and flood control. And he said, yeah, what the government does is it takes an area of about a 500-year flood, and they flood it. And that's flood control. And so this is the idea that in order to save humanity, you've got to destroy it. It's like sounding like the United States during the Vietnam War. We have to destroy Vietnam in order to save it. Hey, give me a break.
Yeah. Now, the Green New Deal guarantees a whole bevy of benefits.
You could give what you want. I mean, I'm really upset that they didn't have a pony. Everybody gets a pony.
Yeah. Well, they did guarantee jobs and medical care and vacations and so on and so forth. So I guess, how is this even possible, which you kind of already answered, but do we have any idea what this would cost?
Well, here's the thing, that you can't explain this in cost in monetary terms, because that assumes if you could come up with this much money, you could have it. Okay. In other words, we just have to be able to come up with something. I mean, cost is what you give up. All right. And there is not enough money out there to have this, because the physical capacity of being able to have all of these windmills that would be needed, they would be all over the country. They still wouldn't cover it. My gosh, I mean, could you imagine the bird strikes that you would have? It would be phenomenal. I mean, the ground would be littered with them. It would be like this. Let's say that AOC had decided that we need to really improve the textile industry. Okay, what we're going to start doing is building factories and fill them with people using hand looms. And we're going to have lots and lots of hand looms, and that's going to take the place of modern technology, modern textile technology. It's an apples and oranges kind of thing. The capacity, there is not enough capacity. You can't just, when you say you got something that's going to cost something, when people talk about the word cost, what they think of are monetary outlays. And a cost is actually something that you give up. It is the next highest alternative of something that you give up. Well, we don't have the capability of being able to create enough of these windmills, that to meet electricity demands. And then, of course, they say, we're going to refurbish every house. We're going to re-insulate. Every house gets insulation now. I mean, it's not even a pipe dream. I mean, it truly is pathetic.
Yeah. Well, I see that the American Action Forum, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, they put out a little study saying $93 trillion over the next 10 years. I don't know if that's right or wrong, high or low, but is there any possible way the government could even raise that kind of money?
Well, no. I mean, you can't, you know, here's the thing. You can, oh, yeah, see, in AOC's mind, well, we can just print that, and then I'll take care of it. But when you're talking about cost, you're talking about giving up something. And then you're talking about taking factors of production that are now involved in one thing and say, okay, we're going to take all of those factors and turn them into something else. You can't do that necessarily. That, let's say you start shutting down all the coal-fired electric plants. Okay, it's not like you could just convert them into windmills. You're not going to be able to do that. And whatever resources now that you are not using in the running and constructing of these plants, it's not like you can take those resources and pivot, and all of a sudden now everybody's building windmills. And we have windmills, we have biomass, we have solar, etc. That we're not talking about the same factors of production. They're not there. We would have to conjure up these things out of thin air. I mean I think $93 trillion. How would you have to raise that kind of money? That kind of money would be indicative of a huge amount of wealth. But they're talking about destroying the capital stock in America and then replacing it. Well, the capital stock isn't worth that much. It's like I said, it's kind of mind-boggling. Yeah. And look, there are people who understand it. I will guarantee you the Democratic leadership, people like Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, even environmental leaders, they understand. Now, they may not be able to, articulate the way that I'm doing it right now, but the point is they have kind of a vague understanding that, wait a second, you can't just go, okay, we'll wipe out this, we're going to build this, and that it's even possible. They understand that it's not remotely possible. But the problem is that you get people like Paul Krugman coming out there saying, well, this is a great idea. Or you get, New York, the New Yorker, and you have, or you have someone like AOC who is really, she's photogenic and she connects very well on things like social media and in the press. And so they've got this rock star. And this rock star is saying, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And and this rock star is helping them politically, but at the same time, they understand this rock star is so far off the rails, that that it's not, what she's saying is not possible. Again, let me put it another way. You cannot explain this thing in terms of just mere monetary outlays. It doesn't really do it problem justice.
Yeah. Some of the other more specific things they mention is basically eliminating cows, retrofitting all buildings. How much damage will this do if they actually follow through with it?
Well, the only way to go through it, you would have to kill a lot of people. I mean, number one, you can't retrofit. So, you can't take factors and they're not limitless. Factors are not limitless. That, all the factors they want to talk about are scarce. And so you would have to find a way to produce them. Retrofitting every building would mean that you would have to take factors away from something else. All right. But in their world, there would be much less electricity, so people would have to do a lot more physical, backbreaking kind of labor. You would have to, do hand agriculture. Of course, you can't have animals because they emit gas. Horses emit gas too. So you would have to hook plows to people, I guess, or something like that. You would have. I mean, you have to understand what it would do. And so the only way you could implement this would be like what Mao did. You use force. You use deadly force. Yeah. If somebody doesn't get with the program, you kill them. And but the Democratic Party right now is not ready to get out there, and not even Bernie Sanders is willing to say, to call up his inner Bolshevik and say, well, what we need to do is kill lots of people.
Now, concerning paying for it all, that side always likes to say, the question is not how we will pay for it, but what is the cost of inaction, and what will we do with the shared prosperity created by these investments? Not really an acceptable economic answer, is it?
Well, no. I mean, there's no shared prosperity. There's shared poverty. These aren't investments. An investment is something that you get a return on. An investment is something that you take current factors of production and you combine them in a way that you create something using fewer resources, using the whole thing, financially speaking, fewer resources than before. That's not what they're talking about here. What they're saying is we're going to create less using more resources, using more financial resources than we had before. The cost of inaction is near zero. Number one, we don't have this simple trend. Every year the temperatures are getting hotter and hotter, and it's going to go on like this off into eternity until the Earth turns into Venus. This is nonsense. They've already been making predictions for the last 30 years. Tell me which ones have come true. Tell me which of their apocalyptic predictions. My gosh, this goes back to Paul Ehrlich in 1969 and the population bomb. That book's been around for 50 years. Ron Sider wrote Rich Christians in an Age of Hunger in 1977, in which he made all these apocalyptic claims, none of which came true. Jimmy Carter's administration wrote Global 2000. It basically said if we don't have a state takeover of energy by the year 2000, and if we don't drastically do this and that, by the year 2000, life as we know it is going to be nasty, brutish, and short. Well, the bottom line is we didn't do any of that, and none of their predictions came true. And so now they have global warming, and even those predictions aren't true. But I mean, it's a good way to scare kids. I mean, it's that, and certainly probably most of my colleagues believe it. They probably believe that it's just, disastrous that we're going to destroy the earth. And think about it. How much has your life changed in the last 30 years? What kind of serious adjustments have you had to make with regards to so-called global warming? Think about it. Tell me what major adjustments have you made in your life?
No, none. And my life has only gotten better over time, too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the case with the vast majority of people in the world. So, the other day, I was on Facebook. I've got a friend. She's a true believer. She's about my age. We're senior citizens, and she's just a true believer in all this. And I said, look, this is what these guys were predicting. They were predicting. She says, yeah, but we're trending in those directions. I'm saying, no, we're not, because if we were trending in those directions, then you would have seen a fall off. You would have, instead of most of the world's population starving to death, we would have a small portion starving to death. The number would be growing and growing, but it would grow slowly if we were trending in that direction. But we were not doing it. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, the 1974 Robert Heilbronner's An Inquiry into the Human Prospect, and then also the Club of Rome Limits of Growth. I think that was 1972, and they didn't come true. Al Gore has been making prediction after prediction that doesn't come true. Think again. I mean, I would ask anybody watching this, ask yourself, what major changes have you had to make in your life due to global warming. Because here's the thing, that if, in fact, this were an existential threat, you would already be making serious changes.
Yep.
If this were the kind of threat that they're talking about, because the larger temperature increases have already happened, that any temperature increases we may see now on the margin are getting less and less.
Well, let me ask you, you looked at the proposal. How much of the Green New Deal actually has to do with climate change, or does it have to do with something else?
Well, given that it's an attempt for the government to entirely control the economy, it's really an attempt by progressives to force people to get with their program. And I would say that it's not thunder in the background. That is one of our dogs growling. But I think that he made me lose my train of thought for a second there. What was I saying? He made me.
Well, that's all right. I mean, you were saying that this is the progressives trying to.
Yeah, the progressives have had for many years. They've had a wonderful future planned for us. Now they don't intend to live in that future any more than Mao didn't live in the future that he was imposing on everybody else. Fidel Castro didn't live in it. The leaders of the Politburo in the Soviet Union didn't live in it. Stalin, Lenin, they didn't live in it. But certainly little Kim with the bad haircut, he doesn't live in it, nor did his fathers. Nobody, Maduro doesn't live in it. Chavez didn't live in it. People who are these visionaries, the vision is for other people to live, not for themselves. They're going to have a high lifestyle. Thank you very much. And that's what's AOC's standard of living has gone up drastically since she won her election. And so, let's really be honest. This is a really good career move for her.
Well, something we kind of touched on already is the media, and the media is doing a really horrible job with a lot of things.
Yeah.
But they're really fawning over Representative Ocasio Cortez and the Green New Deal. What are your thoughts on the media's handling of this?
Well, you have people, frankly, who are economic illiterates. You have to understand this is not about physical capital. Okay, this is about the economics of destroying your capital base and trying to build a brand new one with technologies that don't work as well as the one that you just destroyed. All right. So that takes, in other words, you have to be able to think along those lines. Most people in the media are incapable of doing it. They just are. If they are elite, they went to echo chambers that doubled as as elite schools, elite prep schools, elite colleges, and so they heard. They got the gospel of intersectionality. They got the gospel of diversity. They were told capitalism is a horrible thing, and look how great life is in Sweden and Denmark and the like. And so there's also something else. I think that's important to remember, that this group of young people coming up, a lot of them are going to college, and a lot of them are carrying a lot of debt for student loans. Okay, and in their thinking, there's a problem here. That wait a second, why should my life be like this? Why should I have to be paying $300, $400 a month, to pay off this, this education, and those are legitimate questions. We also have an economy, a tech economy, which has made some people extremely wealthy. Now, understand something: their wealth is in proportion to their personal wealth. That is in proportion to the wealth that their entrepreneurial ideas have created. And that Jeff Bezos did not become a billionaire, by being a bad guy, being mean, to employees or whatever. I am sure that working at Amazon can be very difficult. You're talking about a business which is revolutionizing retail, and it pushes things to the edge. But he got wealthy because he owns stock in a firm that is reinventing how we do retail. It's like how Walmart reinvented how we did retail 30 years ago. And guess what? If you are a resource owner with that, if you are somebody who has title to the firm, and the wealth that it creates, you're going to become wealthy yourself. I mean, but here's the thing: it's Bezos is not making $1 billion a year or whatever. Almost all of his wealth is tied up in Amazon stock, just like Bill Gates, and all his wealth is in Microsoft stock, or Steve Jobs in Apple stock. And it's not like they could just take that. Hey, I want to cash in on my stock, and I want to have $400 billion in the bank. I want to go spend $400 billion. It's not going to work like that. I mean, you can't. They couldn't unload their stock. The price would plummet down to near zero. So it's more. But the problem is this: they see people who are wealthy. A place like San Francisco as well. If you have, I've been out there 3 times in the past year or so, and San Francisco, you have this huge study of contrasts, and the average person can't get it. They see billionaires, they see homeless people, so they say, "Oh, they must be homeless because they're billionaires in San Francisco," and they add 2 and 2 and get 6. But you have that as well. You don't have that positive view of a free market. But let me let's do a little bit of history, okay? All right. We're going to go back to 1980. All right. What kind of movies were popular in 1980? Movies like Death Wish. Okay, they take place in New York City. What is New York City like in Death Wish?
You're asking?
Yeah.
It was crime-ridden, from what I can remember.
Crime-ridden. What else? And what do the buildings look like?
I want to say dilapidated, but
yeah. You've got whole abandoned buildings. What you've got is a dystopian society, but we remember New York as, it was pretty dystopian. You've got, by 1977, you've got Son of Sam, you have power going out. I mean, that it's getting bad enough where people can think of making movies like Escape from New York, and it makes perfect sense. You think of other movies like Mad Max, that you had the post-nuclear world. What you had was a dystopian society. We had inflation that was double digits. We had high rates of unemployment. There was a real question about standard of living. What was going to happen with our standard of living? And during the 1980s, what happens is you have huge amounts of capital investment. You've got deregulation, which, by the way, Jimmy Carter, who didn't understand what he was doing, deregulates transportation, telecommunications, finance, and what else? And anyway, and so all of a sudden, that instead of life trending downward, instead of our cities becoming total hellholes, like we were seeing them as, they become pretty neat places to live. And the water starts getting cleaner, air starts getting cleaner. That telecommunications is such, we don't have this double-digit inflation anymore. Telecommunications allows you to be in touch with people. Before, if your car broke down someplace and you didn't have a payphone nearby, and nobody's coming by, you were in deep trouble. And that life was more difficult. And the belief was that this is just the beginning. Just wait, until it really turns into something dystopian. But now, I mean, if you think 30-odd, nearly 40 years later, that the world did not turn out the way all of these so-called experts said it would. And and look, I'm not here to heap praise on Ronald Reagan or whatever. Say Reagan did, Jimmy Carter did as much as, in some ways, as Reagan did. And it was Jimmy Carter that put Paul Volcker, at the Federal Reserve, who really put the, kibosh on inflation. But the point is that our economy really made change for the better during that era. And, someone like Paul Krugman would not be able to see that. He wouldn't understand. Although I will say this, that at the Southern Economic Association meetings in 2004, he was a speaker at a special session, and I, was in the room, and Joe Salerno was sitting next to me, and I got the first question. And I said, point blank, do you want to return back to the 70% tax rates that existed in 1981? And he said, no, those rates were insane. And now he's endorsing them, which means that Krugman must be insane. But I think that what you have to understand here is that what was predicted, and the progressives kept predicting all of this apocalyptic stuff, saying, you've got to let us in charge, put us in charge, let us tell you what to do. It's kind of like the neoconservatives, right? They want to be in charge. Well, we got, if we could just invade Iraq, if we could just turn one country into a democratic showplace, we can end all of this trouble. What did they do? They went in there and made everything worse.
Yeah. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
One last question, Professor Anderson.
Yeah.
And it's a concern I have, particularly with talking heads that disagree with Ocasio Cortez and the Green New Deal. And essentially what a lot of them do is they just mock and ridicule her.
Yeah.
And I think that her pie in the sky schemes need to be beaten down with facts and knowledge and all that. And I think this movement that we're seeing with her should be taken very, very seriously and not just mocked and ridiculed. There's a lot of true believers, like you said, that are being pumped out of the universities, and they're in the same mindset.
Yeah.
She must be taken seriously, right, in this whole movement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, number one, she's not stupid. I mean, they tried to make her stupid, like she's, and I don't think that really is if you're talking about strategy, it's not a very good strategy. But if somebody's not stupid, I'm not going to try to portray them as stupid. That's not the problem. Is not her lack of intelligence. The problem is that she is intelligent. She's intelligent like the economic planners in the Soviet Union. These guys, they went to Moscow State, they had PhDs, they had a curriculum that was every bit as rigorous as what you would see at Harvard or MIT. These guys were good in terms of, they were intelligent, they were well ahead of me in their math skills, their modeling skills, with the mathematical models that they could create and all that. Of course, it didn't do the economy any good. It actually was destructive. But she is going to be around for a long time. It's kind of, and the other person, unfortunately, is going to be around is David Hogg. And we're going, so in another 4 years, we're going to have to deal with him on a much larger basis. He'll run for Congress someplace, and we'll have David Hogg. But no,
I didn't see that coming.
Well, think about it. I mean, he's always there, and he's a media darling because he was at Parkland. But I think that you have to keep in mind that the problem isn't her lack of intelligence. The problem isn't her stupidity or anything like that. That I don't like seeing hate directed at her. Of course, I don't do Twitter, so I don't make comment. The problem is that she is putting together, and it's all idealism. I mean, I am sure she believes that she has a great future for America if they would just listen to her. But, Mao believed that too. Mao, do you think Mao, when he was trying one experiment after another, well, this will work, maybe this will work. This will, and that he wasn't saying, hey, how many people can we kill? Now, they did order that at least one person from every village had to be killed. But, that was for, to scare the heck out of people and make them get with the program. But the idea was father knows best. Well, that the problem is not her stupidity. The problem is that this central planning command economy that they're trying to generate would be, this would be an apocalyptic event. That this would kill people. This would kill people on an even greater scale than what you saw in the Great Leap Forward, or for that matter, even World War II. This would be a people-killing entity, and if the co-founder of Greenpeace is willing to say that as well, somebody who's quite on the other side from me, if he's willing to say that, I think we need to listen.
Yeah. Serious stuff. And she's also quite the marketer too. So.
Oh yeah. She has very, very good political skills. I marvel at them. She's a force of nature. A real force of nature. And you have to, and I think a lot of people aren't willing to acknowledge that, or they're, but they don't see it. But the problem is that what you're dealing with her are really bad ideas, and the worst ideas are those that are conjured up by intelligent people.
All right. Well, thanks for this conversation, Professor Anderson, and thanks for spending the time with me today to talk about this really, really serious issue.
All right. Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. You take care.